Welcome to the Sacred Reclamation Podcast. Here we will be exploring how we can reclaim the sacredness of birth, life, death, and all the happenings in between. My name is Sydney Sands, and my intention with this podcast is to reclaim the art of storytelling. This is a space where we will practice allowing the simple act of telling our stories and listening to the stories of others to be medicine for our bodies and spirits. I invite you to keep an open mind and an open heart as you listen to these stories. Grab a cup of tea, maybe a little snack, and settle in for story time. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sacred Reclamation Podcast. I'm your host, Sydney Sands, and today on the show we have my friend Stephen Monnier. So this podcast is actually continuation. This is a part 2. We've recorded a podcast back in the beginning of October of 2024, and we were interrupted by Hurricane Helene. If you've seen either the first half or part 1 of this podcast, you see that about like 20 or 30 minutes in, the screen goes black and we lost power, and we were able to continue our conversation and keep recording because I still had power on my computer and the cameras and the microphone. And then eventually the power never came back on, and everything ran out of battery, so we were kind of forced to pause. And now it is February 2025. We are in Stephen's home state of Florida. We've been reunited. We're super happy to be here, and we get to hear the rest of Stephen's story. And where we left off last time was we talked a little bit about death, and then we were literally about to get into your reclamation story. Like, I think the last sentence I said was pretty much what I would have said before asking you what your reclamation story is. So first of all, thank you for being here. Thanks for coming back. I'm really excited to be sitting here and spending time with you. We've had a wonderful day today, and I'm really excited to not only hear more of your story, but also I just love that we had this great dramatic pause in between, and things change so much over time. And so I'm really excited to see what is going to present now that maybe wouldn't have come up back then. And I just find it perfect. And I'm excited. So thanks for being here.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Okay, so we're just going to jump right in from where we left off, which is a little unusual if we're starting a podcast this way, but it's also beautiful. We just jumped into the river, so this is very fitting. We're ready to just jump in and go for it. So here's a big question. What is it that you're reclaiming as sacred in your life? What song are you singing? What message are you sharing? What dance are you dancing?
Cool. So it's funny because, like I told you earlier, I maybe just a couple days ago, actually Friday night, I think it was, I was talking to somebody, and it kind of the short version of my answer kind of dropped in,
Yeah.
I don't know that I'll be able to word it as eloquently as I think I did in that moment, but I'll do my best.
Okay.
So essentially our relationship, I'm trying to, I guess, reclaim our relationship with the world as nature, not as something apart from it.
Mm-hmm.
we are nature. It's not a separate thing from us. We're not separate from it. It's there's nothing in nature that doesn't include us, and really, I mean, although my work and everything spans across animals and fungi and plants, it really goes mostly into plants, and especially like forests and things of that nature. Like uh, my relationship with plants, I think I might have said this in the first part or half or whatever, I don't quite remember, but plants have always been people to me. And it's funny because I was just talking about this with somebody else. They're starting to study these things, and they're showing that plants can actually recognize people, and they can
Mm.
even sense the color of your shirt. And they I don't know, I haven't looked this up, but what somebody told me was they had somebody go in and kill a plant in like a garden or something, and then they did a lineup, and they tested like the electrical signals in the plants, and how they reacted to each person in the lineup. And when the person that had killed the one plant came up, they all like went crazy and whatnot. So
Oh, wow.
so they're just showing certain things like that. But even the studies that are showing like that trees mother their young, essentially, that they care for the little seedlings and things that sprout and everything that have come from them. And even that trees, if a tree falls in the forest, the other trees around it will send nutrients and stuff to support the stump, even though the tree itself is gone and can't support its own life. And so there's just all of these things that they're finding that, like, to me, it's kind of been like, not to sound arrogant, but like, well, duh. Like I've always seen they're social beings, and like in the forest where I spend most of my free time, if not in the garden, it's like one of the wonderful things about the forest is everything has a place. Like there is nothing in the forest that's out of place. Okay, we can get into invasives and non-natives and exotics and all that good stuff. That's going to be a big tangent that I'm not going to really get into right now. Um, but in the forest, when I go there, it's just me. And we were talking about this earlier,
Mm-hmm.
that, uh, there's us as animals, as primal beings, whatever. And then there's all the crap we throw in between that, or, after that, or on top of it, from society and our upbringing and everything. And then there's that, I guess, that spiritual realm, or whatever you want to call, that transcendent aspect of us. And in the forest, I feel like all that stuff in the middle, I can just shove it aside. Like it doesn't exist there. The forest doesn't care, like, if you're a businessman, if you're a doctor, if you're this or that. It doesn't care if you're a man, a woman, a this or that. Like it doesn't, quite frankly, I don't know. Am I allowed to cuss?
Yeah.
Okay, it doesn't give a shit about what you are, or what your ideas about yourself or whatever, And when I lived in Ocala, did we talk about this in the last one? I don't know. Do I even need to keep asking this, or should I just?
Yeah, just go. And we didn't really get that much into plants. I mean, you did share a little bit briefly about how you've always felt connected and like magnetized and always have had this special relationship with plants and animals since you were a child. But I think that's pretty much as deep as we got.
Okay. So yeah, so I've always been this way with plants, and then there was a time directly after high school, where I went to the Ocala National Forest, and I stayed there for like 6 months, and I was studying yoga. And I lived in the middle of the forest, and I didn't know that this was going to happen to me. I didn't know that this was something for me. I knew I liked trees, and I knew I was all hippy dippy and stuff. But when I got there, what would happen to me is, like, I would go out first thing in the morning. And back then I was like waking up really early, like we're talking like 3, 4 a.m. I would do my practice or whatever. And then I would step outside just to like take in the morning as the sun is rising. And I would just, this trance would just fall on me, you know, and I would just go into the forest. I had no breakfast, no water, no cell phone on me, no backpack, no supplies, no nothing, just whatever I was wearing, um, or not wearing. And I would just be gone. Like, I'd have no idea where I was going or what was happening. Like, the forest would just take me. And sometimes there were a few times where I came out of this and then I was like, where the fuck am I? Like, what is going on right now? you know and other times, I had to work at getting lost, because sometimes this trance wouldn't fall upon me, but I knew, like, I want to be there. I want to be like with the forest, because at that point I just became unimpeded, like totally just primal, like not like walking on all fours or that, but I would just behave in a way that socially wouldn't make sense to people. You know, it didn't fit within that construct, and it didn't fit within the framework of what I understood, behavior or whatever to be, because I was just responding to the forest as a part of it. This smell happens, this sound happens, this things, and you just go. And I would end up in the most phenomenal places. It was, I mean, I would end up, this was really before I had an idea of like herbalism and stuff like that before, but mostly it was like Western or Eastern herbalism. Or
How old were you at this point?
I was right out of high school, so I would have been like 18, 19.
Okay.
Yeah, 18, 19. This was 2016, 2016.
Okay.
Summer to fall/winter of 2016. And I would just find these really magnificent places that it looked like nobody had ever been there before. And it's funny because when I would try and find those places later, I sometimes I could, but a lot of times, unless I was in that trance, I wouldn't be able to find them.
You mean like go back to those places?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Like, to physically get there, I would have to be lost. Like, they would not let me find them if I was. And I speak about them like that because in my experience, they're people. Like, even the places, not just the plants and the animals, but like the spaces themselves have a spirit,
Mm-hmm.
and a behavior and a personality. And when you open yourself to the forest, it communicates with you. And each individual space like communicates with you. Yeah, so when I lived at the forest, like I said, a trance would fall on me, and then I would just be off. Sometimes I'd go on a walk with my friend, and she'd take her dog or whatever, and then she would be going back because she had to take her dog back or go work or something. But I would just continue in the forest. So if that state didn't happen naturally, I had to find ways to enter that state. So I started developing ways of getting lost, because even if you actively try to get lost, what most people tend to do is, where the path is, so you'll stick very close to it. Even subconsciously, you'll be right around the path. So you don't really get lost. You maybe went a little off the path, but you didn't let yourself go.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless, the forest is a magical place, but to really experience her depth, you have to surrender yourself to her. And so I found very simple methods. Like, one of the methods I used was I would go, however far in, and then when I was at the place on the trail where I was like, okay, this is where I want to start trying to get lost, just take in your surroundings And the first thing that kind of pops out to you, whether it's a bird call or an insect, or maybe you see an animal, something like that. Okay, maybe don't do an animal. That might be a safety concern, but well, animal, birds and insects aren't animals, but if you hear a bird call, follow the bird call until either you arrive or you don't hear it anymore. And then the next bird call you hear, follow that one. Or my method that I typically used was I would look for a butterfly, or there were a lot of cricket type things that would hop, or a wasp or something, and I would pick one that I found, that stuck out to me, and I would follow it. They're small, so they disappear eventually. At that point, wait until you see the next one and follow it, and go and go and go. And eventually you have no idea where you are, and now you're really lost.
Yeah.
And now that I'm talking about it like that, I kind of think I'm realizing like how it worked. But when you're really lost, you're in a heightened state of awareness because there's a part of you that's panicking. And you're freaking the fuck out because I have no idea where the hell I am right now,
Yeah.
And I have no idea how to get back. And so you're at a really, really heightened level of awareness because or alertness, and you're taking everything in. So your level of consciousness for what is going on is already heightened. Not only that, but your emotional intensity, your energetic intensity is heightened. And if you can just kind of unlatch yourself from your survival mechanism and let go into that intensity and that alertness and consciousness and just surrender to the forest, it'll happen almost instantly. But you have to have a sense of abandon. If you don't have the trust in the forest, if you don't have that conversation with her, like, hey, reveal yourself to me. Like, I'm all ears. Like, I have this little prayer that I kind of do, and it always turns out differently, but I tried teaching this to my niece or like to other people when I take them to the forest, and it's like, or I kind of do it myself, whether or not they're aware that I'm doing it. But I always introduce myself to the forest, and I, kind of affirm to her and ask her, I'm like, may I have the eyes to see you? May I have the ears to hear you? May I have the mind to understand you? And may I have the heart to know you? May I receive whatever it is you have to offer me, and may I offer you whatever it is you need from me. And then you enter a different space. Then it's like, okay, it's a collaboration. And she knows at least part of you has the intention to know her. And the plants respond very much because have I ever told you the story about the pawpaw?
I don't think so.
Or the beauty berry, or so. Okay, there was a time where I entered a trance and I kind of went into the forest. Well, I went into the forest, not kind of. I went into the forest, and I was in the middle of the forest, and I came out of the trance, and it was a hot day. I mean, this is probably like August, September, I don't know. It was wicked outside. And I'm like, holy shit, I have no idea where I am right now. Like, and I have to get back, like, so I just, go wherever I can figure. And this beauty berry, I come upon this beauty berry, and it is talking to me, and it's saying, hey, eat my berries. It was fully fruiting, so it was clearly fall because that's when they fruit. But it was fully fruiting, like these bright clusters of purple berries. I mean, you'll see them everywhere, but it was like, eat me, like you're hungry. you need sustenance right now, like eat me, like, and then I was like, no thanks, like I only eat what's in a grocery store or from a garden, I'm not gonna eat some random plant or whatever. And it was like, eat me. I didn't eat it.
At the time, did you know it was a beauty berry?
I had no idea what the plant was.
Okay.
I just saw this plant with bright purple berries, and I'm thinking, oh, bright colors mean it's toxic,
Yeah.
But then not only that, it started telling me other things about itself. It said, okay, this is how you use my leaves. This is how you use my root and my bark, and um, and it was going into less physical things about how to use it and interact with it. And so I was like, okay, those seem a little safer than eating you. So, anyway, when I got back home, I went straight to my computer and I Googled Florida plant purple berries, and I went to Google Images because I didn't have name for this. I didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
So if I read anything, I'd be like, well, I don't know, So I went to Google Images, and then sure enough, beautyberry pops up all along the image search. So I click on one of them, and then I was like, okay, this must be the plant. And then I did a Google search, medicinal uses of beautyberry, or is beautyberry edible? Sure enough, it was edible, and everything it told me was in its list of medicine, its list of medicinal uses.
Yeah.
And it just blew my mind. I was just sitting here like, I thought I was tripping. I was like, did this really just happen? Like I was awestruck. And after that was probably, I don't know, maybe like the third or fourth time I was like taken out into the forest or something, and I was like, what the fuck? After that, I couldn't stay away from the forest.
Yeah.
I was bought, and I just dove into this trance, and like I one of my projects that I'm working on is, I was originally doing a manuscript for like a book that I was going to publish, but really I think it's something that needs to be taught in person and experienced, especially because a lot of them are, you're out in the middle of the forest, you might want to take safety measures,
Mm-hmm.
But in essence, it was all the ways that nature tries to bring us into trance. Like we just did the thing with the water out in the river. That's one of them. I guided you so it wasn't as organic as it normally would happen, but and I didn't take you through that exact process because it's a little more lengthy, but it's there's all these different ways. So part of my project is to lay out these different ways that you can engage with nature to enter a trance state. But then also, what is the impact of each of those different kinds of trances?
Can I pause you for a second?
Yeah.
Because I just have I would argue that it was still an organic moment, because although you guided me, if we're coming from a premise of not being separate from nature, like being guided by the human is still being guided by, it's all the same, So
Yeah.
I would argue that was an organic,
absolutely,
introduction into the trance experience.
Yeah, entirely. Because you're absolutely right. Because I only did that because I was prompted by the river.
Yeah.
From my little experience and my time there before you came out, that's what she offered me, and she wanted me to share with you.
Yeah.
So you're 100% right.
I'm having this thought. We talked a little bit earlier about how we were just kind of talking about the river, which is the Steenhatchee River, by the way. Beautiful river. But we were having a conversation down there, just kind of playing around with why she's the way she is, why she presents the way she does. And when you're just talking, she's very chatty in a way. Like she communicates very well, and like she's very open, and I wonder if that is because she is so like it's kind of rural out here. There's not a lot of interaction that she has with humans.
Mm.
I mean, and that's subjective, but compared to like some other rivers where people are out boating and tubing and fishing and just like all the river activities.
Mm.
And so I bet she gets so excited. One, just to have someone come to her, and then two, like the level of excitement when it's someone who is open to receiving and being in conversation and communication. And
Yeah.
like, that I would just think that she probably got really excited for you to come, and she was like, "Oh, like you're here, let's talk."
I
let's
sure hope so, because it was.
let's talk, let's do stuff, like let's
Yeah.
collaborate. So
Yeah, it's funny though you say that, because a lot of the plants and the forests I've been to, like, really, it's once you know how to drop into that and to open up to it and be receptive and collaborative, then I mean, so many of the plants and the animals and the spirits, they are eager to share what they have with you.
yeah.
And there are some which are a little bit more withholding, or it takes a little more, to develop the relationship. And that's different for each person. Just like, I interact with people differently than you might. It's all very different for each person. Some plants in general are very, cool with everybody. Other ones are kind of like, I gotta test you, like, um, but yeah, it's very much like that. There's so much that they want to give, especially I feel what you're saying a lot, because people don't really engage with them like that.
Mm-hmm.
At least not in our neck of the woods, our part of the world.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how people interact with them. And so that's what I'm reclaiming, is it's like, this is honestly, this is really the only way I know how to operate. I've and it's really where I feel the most at home. And I've had people say, "Oh, aren't you worried about this or that or the other thing?" And it's like, not really. But like I told you the other day, like when I go to a new forest and I'm like about to get lost, I have safety measures I take because I've learned lessons,
Yeah.
But I'm shitting my pants. I'm freaking the fuck out. Like, I'm like, am I really about to do this? Like I was telling you
Oh, yeah, yeah,
earlier,
yeah.
like, is this the time a bear's gonna come up on me? Is this the time I'm gonna eat something I shouldn't have? Like, whatever.
I think that that's an important thing to share with people, because I think people have a lot of fear around walking into a forest, and what's going to be in there, what's going to bite me, what's coming to get me, so I think for you, as someone who spends a lot of time, and this is like your reclamation and your life's mission, for you to share that, like when you go to a new forest, that like you have that fear and that energy. Yeah, I think that is important.
Yeah.
But it's not like, oh, you're not like this special person who's not scared of it. Like you just go in. It's a moment of, feeling that fear and still taking the step into the forest.
Yeah. I mean, it's because, I mean, it really is a spiritual process for me. And it's kind of, it happened as a shift in perspective for me. I don't know at what point, but there have been like a lot of points in my life where it was like I realized, like you're driving by someplace and you'd be like, "Oh, wouldn't it be cool to like stop on the side of the road and like check that out?" But no, I got to keep going.
Mm-hmm.
Like realizing, "Oh shit, yeah, I can pull over and stop and get out," like that kind of thing, like these realizations, like, "Oh, I don't have to think about doing this. Like I can actually go do it."
Yeah.
I don't have to watch somebody else do it or just like imagine this, like it's my life. Like I actually have the ability to go and do this.
Yeah.
And but the thing I think that kind of allowed me to do that is I learned to be curious about my fear. Like, why am I afraid of that? Because, a lot of things, like what we were talking about earlier with, talking to people who believe different things or think different things or have different viewpoints than us. I think that's really important because how can I challenge myself? How can I check what it is I think and believe and my facts if I only surround myself with things that agree with me? If I never look at something else, like how do I know that I'm in the right, you
Yeah.
know? But not only that, like I was saying before, that's a way that I check in with myself. The more that I'm frustrated or like defensive or especially defensive, towards what somebody else is saying, the more I know, that's my gauge of how much I have to check in with myself and reflect on like what's going on. And so it's that same process that happens out in the forest. Why am I so afraid of this? Why does what's out there scare me so much? Because the reality is if it's a forest I've never been to, I don't actually know what's out there.
Yeah.
It might be all bunny rabbits and butterflies for all I know. So it's on the outside it looks like I'm exploring the forest, but really I'm exploring myself. And that's what I'm saying is like we're not apart from nature. It's a reflection, a mutualism that's there. And like I was saying before, when I go in with this receptivity, but also this place of collaboration, the forest asks things of me. It'll ask me, oh, put this over here. Oh, do this. Oh, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And, it'll tell me, oh, pick up that rock or whatever. And then I just go walking, walking. And then suddenly I don't know, there's something and it's like, oh, that's what this rock is for. And then I leave the rock there. I don't know,
Yeah.
or, so it really is this collaboration, but I'm there as not only a child of the forest, as a steward of it. You know, if the forest tells me not to do something in its sphere, I won't do that. I might do that very same thing in another forest. Like, let's say, people are talking about guerrilla planting or whatever, like planting seeds in wild spaces.
Mm-hmm.
I personally only agree with planting native seeds. Other people feel differently. But even native seeds, if I were to take a native seed to a forest and it said that plant doesn't belong here or that seed like don't I won't put it there.
Yeah.
If the forest does not tell me, yes, that's okay. Yes, we want that here. Like I won't do it. If I'm unsure, I won't do it.
Yeah.
Like it's that level of respect I show the forest and the plants, and in turn, I find that more often than not, it shows that same respect for me. But going to the plants, a big part of my reclamation is people are, plant medicines are really big right now in a lot of spaces like ayahuasca, peyote, all these different things. And in that same sphere, a lot of those plant medicines, and I know people are going to feel all sorts of ways about this, but this is my work, so I have to. It's a lot of people are abusing them.
Mm-hmm.
Either they're using them recreationally without a sense of respect and reverence towards this medicine as a spirit, as an entity, as a conscious being, or for its power. Because, the power that these medicines have to heal you is nuclear power. The same power that can blow up, an entire city is the same power that could power that very city. And the plant medicines are very similar. And, if you're not ready for it, or if it's not a space conducive to that, like the plants are spirits, they'll operate of their own accord, but all those other factors do factor in. But, I'm of the opinion, having indigenous ancestry, that our people have done these things in particular ways because that's how we've been guided to do them, by those beings. And over time, learning so much. And so it's an ancestral knowledge that was guided by the hand of those very spirits that we're interacting with.
Mm-hmm.
So, in my view, if you're going to ingest these medicines, one should go about it in the indigenous way. If you are somebody who maybe has a past with these beings and their medicine, that's maybe, been traumatizing, or let's say you have suffered addiction or something, or you've used recreationally in the past, whatever this is, or maybe somebody who shouldn't have been facilitating was facilitating for you and something went awry, or maybe you're just too frightened to enter that space, or you're interested in it, whatever your reason is, you want to enter that space, but you don't feel comfortable ingesting. Part of my work is to develop ways with the spirits to walk people into that realm without having to ingest it. So, how do I walk into the realm of ayahuasca without ingesting the actual medicine? How do I walk into these otherworldly places, without that? And so, by communing with the plants, and literally, I will sit and watch a plant for years and watch it go through every single phase: flowering, leafing, seeding, everything. And I work with the plant to understand it and communicate with it, but then by utilizing its music and its geometry and the different things it reveals, it works with me on different rituals and ceremonies that would walk somebody into that and allow somebody to communicate and merge with the spirit without having to ingest. Maybe one day they get to the point where they do end up ingesting it. That's a different story. That's not what I'm talking about right now. But like the river, how do I engage with the river without drinking its water or something? That's a poor way of saying it, but that's my really big project.
Yeah.
Because for me, when I go to the forest, it's psychedelic. And mind you, I'm going in totally sober, but it's fractals on fractals on fractals. And everything is shifting and whatevering. It's fully immersive in that kind of way, but I'm just open to it. And I understand I'm kind of that way, but I feel like part of the recreational use of these medicines and things is people searching for that which is innately a part of them. They may not have the tools to access it, but they're so eager and so wanting to, that they'll do anything, no matter how reckless or wanton, or no matter the cost of the opportunity, they'll go for it.
Yeah. I think it really has something to do with our loss of connection from our intuition and our, original nature. Because I don't know how it is for you, but for me, like communicating and being in relationship with all these different spirits, plants, animals, the forest, the river, the waters, like the wind, for me, it's very simple. And I think that, like, when you talk about you came to the beauty berry and like she was saying, eat me, like you need sustenance, just eat me, you can eat me. And she's telling you all these things like it's okay to eat me and you can also do this with me. Like, I think that a lot of people would hear something like that and they just push it out, or they just like they dismiss it as like a thought, or like that was a random thought, or like, but for me it's really trusting that whatever comes in is like, it's not necessarily just me, it's not necessarily just me thinking in my head, you know, it's like that is the way the communication comes in with me. So it's like listening when the river is saying like come closer, like touch me,
Yeah.
splash me, feel me, like bring me. With the last several podcasts I've done, she was really calling to me and was like, bring me with you. And so I would gather a little bit of river water and put her in a jar, and she would sit in the conversation with us. And then I would pour it in a plant after, like one of these house plants. And that was just like, because that was what I was being asked to do.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I just think that I think that we all have that. I mean, I don't know. I obviously am only myself having this experience, but I think that we all have that, but we often dismiss these things as like, as being nothing, or do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
And I think that it's a lot more simple than we make it up to be. And I think that, yeah, what people are searching for when they go out to do the ayahuasca retreat or whatever ceremony and they're ingesting these plants, that is the more complex and more like doing, like it feels like they're doing something more, rather than knowing that you could have this experience by just kind of settling and opening up to it and being in the energy of the plant. Like, we don't necessarily have to take it that far to ingest the plant.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that was coming up for me when you're talking about all this is like, and this is a big topic and kind of a big question to even try to formulate, but I guess, like, what are your thoughts on the way that life is going now, that everything is so fast, we're on our phones, we're disconnected, we don't really have many, or we brush past the opportunities to get curious about our fear because we're just inside on our phone, and we're like, we almost are like building these lives to where like there's nothing we can be scared of because we're just like going into this virtual reality, you know. And that's so different from, and I think it makes it like greatens the fear of going into the forest, because it's like, I don't know anything besides, you know, the virtual forest where I play this game. And I don't know what my question is. It's like, what are your thoughts? And then that also ties into the conversation around only being, like only seeing, having our views and our beliefs confirmed, like by this algorithm that is designed by these robots, where like we're constantly in this mode when we're on social media and we're online, where we're just being fed more stuff that we agree with or more stuff that we might like, and then interacting with people who think similarly or like the same things as us, to where even that becomes scary, to go out into the real world and interact with real people
Mm-hmm.
who might disagree with you or believe something different. So I guess it's kind of like this juxtaposition of, maybe it's like where we came from and where we're headed, and it just feels like it just keeps getting further and further away. So how do you find the middle ground, or what is like the remedy to guide people back to that? Because I love everything you're saying. I think it's beautiful and amazing, and I think it's worthwhile to slow down and tune into subtle energies and take the time to, go into the depths of our fears and spend time in mystery and get lost in the trance and like see where we end up, because we often end up in the most beautiful places when we do that. And also, I feel like most people nowadays like are not interested in that. And that's okay. That's not necessarily a problem, and it's not that everyone has to be like, we don't do our work to satisfy everyone. The people that are meant to find it will find it and experience it. But yeah, I just think on a broader society and a broader perspective of like where humanity is headed.
Yeah.
What do you want to say about that?
Okay.
It was like a 5-minute question.
Okay.
But that was what I got out of everything you said. And I wanted to make sure I brought that into the conversation.
Yeah. So I'm not really concerned with getting this to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is getting it to the people who want it,
Mm-hmm.
who like really want to know, and the people who need it. Because even without me or anybody else who's doing anything similar to this, how strongly I have experienced this and how I feel about this is that it will never be a time when there is not at least one person on the planet who engages with the earth this way. Because it is built into us. It is what we are at our primal level. This is like the original human.
Mm-hmm.
So it would break my heart if I never passed it to anybody or shared it with anybody, but I wouldn't be worried about it. Do I hope everybody takes to it? Absolutely. Now, that being said, I'm not concerned with people getting lost in the forest. I know I talk a lot about it, and that was kind of my initiation into it and whatever, but my concern is mostly people engaging with the real world, with these beings that are part of us. And this is where I feel like the ecological and environmental movements fall short a lot of times, is everybody's saying, don't cut down trees. Oh, they give you oxygen. Oh, yada, yada, yada. Nobody can tell that it gives you oxygen. Nobody can walk. I mean, maybe there's somebody. Okay. Nobody can walk outside and be like, yep, that oxygen came from that tree over there. I mean, it's absurd. Like, even for me, and I say some pretty absurd shit, as you can tell. Like I said, I'm sure there's somebody who can do that, or there's a way to experience that. But for 99.9999999% of the population, that's not going to happen. That's not an experience that they will actually have. They could think it up and imagine it up, or smoke enough weed to think that they're having that experience. But, most of that's going to be hollow. So that's why I really, especially in terms of advocating for Indigenous people and recognizing them for what they have contributed to human culture and knowledge and whatever as a whole, I really look to ethnobotany. Because all this stuff I've been talking to up until now is really very mystical and, esoteric and whatever. And it's very woo-woo for a lot of people, which is fine.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to get into it that way. But I look to ethnobotany because the beautyberry experience is actually what got me into ethnobotany. And ethnobotany is the way that people utilize plants in different parts of the world, primarily indigenous people, but it speaks to the cultural and indigenous way that plants have been utilized, like for fiber, to make like tapestries or clothing, or the herbal medicine that they get from plants, or the different food and edible uses, or the cuisine and stuff like that, the utility that the plants have and how we engage in them. And to me, is it's like, and one of the reasons why I think gardening, connects with so many people as it does, is because if I tell you you can eat something and then you eat it, now that plant matters to you
Yeah.
because it has given you something. And on a very fundamental level, you have taken that plant as a part of yourself. Physically, that has happened when you eat of its fruit or leaves or whatever. And so now by engaging with people and showing them the different uses of the plants, they have a living experience of the plant. And it's no longer this intellectual bullshit of, oh, you only breathe because of that plant,
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, that's all great and all, but okay, how many people speak in math and, all that stuff, like, but food, I mean, food connects people across culture, across time, across whatever. So there's that, but then medicine and herbalism. Although I think that's great, not as many people connect with it because it how involved you are with herbalism oftentimes, not always, directly translates to how often you get sick, the conditions you have, or the people in your life have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So herbalism only generally, I find, speaks to specific people and to varying degrees. Everybody has to eat.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody has to eat. Um, So food is so foraging is a big thing that I like doing, or gardening and stuff for edible things, because my niche, I'm very involved in like agroforestry and like permaculture and syntropic agriculture and stuff like that, regenerative agriculture. Um, my niche is working with native plants that are edible, and trying to encourage people to use native plants in their gardening, nitrogen fixers and things that will build the soil or aid their garden, or for pollinators and stuff like that. Because everything that we do in gardening or agriculture that might, like international plants, we have a native plant that will do the same work.
Mm-hmm.
We don't need a non-native plant to do that. Some of them work better than the natives, but that's why I'm saying we don't need to be planting invasives. We don't need to do these other things. I'm tangenting, so I'm going to come back. But in terms of what you were saying, with people being drawn into the screens and everything, that's one of the reasons I went back on social media. Because I went off, so I deleted all my, like, not the apps, I deleted the accounts entirely.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons I went back is because I realized the amount of people that I could reach was severely inhibited by not being involved. And don't get me wrong, I loathe being on social media, but also I was disconnected from a lot of my community that way. The foragers and whatever, and because I'm in some more fringe type interests, so it's not like all of us are around every corner, and they require natural spaces, which unfortunately are becoming less and less.
Yeah.
So there's only so many of us in so many places. So,
which is a beautiful thing about the internet and about social media, is being able to connect with people from like all around the world or all around your state, or just find people in your area who have similar interests, like through Facebook groups or following certain pages. And yeah, I do love that about the internet.
yeah. And so the thing is, really, I'm not really reclaiming anything. What's really happened is that the forest has claimed me, and I'm just doing what it needs to be done. I'm just doing what it's asked of me.
Do you think the forest is like reclaiming you?
it's already claimed me. There's no reclaiming to be done. Like, the only reason I really like live in society and everything, because I think we talked about this before, but like I was getting ready to be a monk, and I was doing all that meditation because I was gonna go off and take sannyas and move to India and blah 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 blah. But I saw how many, because really that's what I would love to do. Live in the forest and just meditate all, but I saw how disconnected people were from this thing that that to me we're inherently connected to. There's not even connecting to be done because it's a part of you. It's like saying, oh, connect to your heart right now. It's already there, like,
Yeah.
like it's already connected. It's already wired in and everything, like, so it's almost like there's this perceived amputation from nature, and I say perceived because it's not real. Like the second the trees are gone and everything's polluted and whatever, like there's not going to be anything else to do, like, so I couldn't go away seeing that needed to happen. And like I said, like it, and it could all be hallucinatory and delusional and whatever. I find fulfillment in it. So I don't give a shit, but this is what's been requested of me by the thing that I am devoted to. Like, there's nothing in it for me to do all this stuff, the social media and whatever. The only thing in it for me is that I'm doing the work that's been requested of me, and to see the fulfillment it brings in other people who are able to connect through the work that I do. But beyond that, like I don't mean that to sound like, I don't know, like pessimist. Like it's I love it, but it's not for me. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like, I'm not doing it for me. Like, I don't know how to do things for me, because if it's for me, what's the point? I'm very minimalist.
Okay, but I want to just push back again on the same tune of like, you're doing what is asked of you from the forest, but if you are the forest, it is for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's almost hard to like fully integrate without separation.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's so ingrained, like separation, everything is separate. This goes in this box, and this is here, and this is here, and that is how we have organized the world.
Yeah.
And so to just like allow that all to dissipate. And I know it's hard not to sound woo-woo about it, but I love that you kind of grounded in with science. And I think that is a cool thing about the time that we're in now in 2025 is, we started this conversation talking about the studies about the plants and them being able to recognize. That just paints the funniest image in my head of like a lineup and it's humans, and then the plants are like on the other side of the
glass.
Yeah. And then they see the one that killed the plant, and all the plants are just like, oh, that's him.
Yeah.
But it's like the science is catching up to things that we've always known and that indigenous people have always passed down.
Yeah.
And then at some point we wrote it all off as woo-woo and hippy-dippy and yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it is very important work and very beautiful, and really the natural essence for it to just like resurface, and that it's being brought back to life, even though it was never like that false amputation. I really like that visual. And I that feels very hopeful, I guess, is to know that is really true. Like this huge disconnect or separation from nature actually doesn't exist. It's kind of just this idea that is being like sold to us, and it's just like, oh yeah, I can just simply realize that that's not even real.
Mm-hmm.
And there, like, it's so easy, it's so simple.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be this huge plan on like how can we save humanity and how can we save the planet, you know?
Yeah.
Like I don't think that we actually don't need to save the planet. Earth is going to be fine no matter what. It would be
I mean, literally, like we were saying earlier, like if all the humans went, Earth would be totally fine. Everything would be popping here.
yeah.
You know, like we don't need to do more. We need to do less, in my view.
Ooh.
I mean, the thing is, we think there's a problem, and so we come up with this idea that we need to fix something. Okay, there's not really a problem most of the time, you know, like
Yeah.
I'm trying to do this without getting like into philosophical semantics, which I know other people really enjoy, but I absolutely just dread it. Like I do everything in my power not to get into like philosophy or
Oh, I
like
love philosophy.
I just find it so cyclical.
But it's because it's true.
Yeah, but anyway, so I like nature will repair herself. Like
Mm-hmm.
now you've got me like, oh, but it's not, you know, like with what I was saying earlier, it's not for me, it's because there is no me.
Yeah.
You know, if it was me, I would be talking about this thing that's Steven
Yeah.
and just me. And that's where the defensiveness comes from, and the greed and the utilitarian stuff, all of that comes from, and the self-preservation, that comes from the sense of me. That's not where my work is coming from. Like, because doing
Mm-hmm.
all this stuff, I mean, yeah, it benefits me, but like, I don't know. But yeah, so anyway, aside from that, uh totally lost my train of thought.
That's okay.
Gone.
God.
God.
We don't need it.
No. But yeah, so that's my work with the plants and what I'm reclaiming, even though, like I said, I've been claimed. I'm not claiming anything.
Yeah.
That's like why on my Instagram or whatever, there's never any pictures of me
Yeah.
because it's not about me.
Yeah.
I don't want my face on it. I don't want my whatever. This is a podcast. It's a different situation, but like whether or not my name's on it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
I don't I don't want anybody to care about like whoever's behind it. The point is that you focus on what's being presented,
Yeah.
not who's presenting it, you know? So that's why my tag isn't my name. My name's not even written on the page. You know, like you'd have no idea. The idea is you would have no idea it was me unless you knew me, you know?
Yeah.
Because I'm the ancestor's hand. I'm just doing the work that my ancestors have handed to me,
Yeah.
you know? What I've been called to do.
Yeah.
So it's like that. Oh, there we go. Got it back. So nature, you know, it's like our bodies. I mean, it is our body, but it's self-healing. You know, if you were supposed to fall ill, your body would have no healing mechanism. It would not have a healing mechanism. If you were intended to fall ill and that be the end of it, you would just fall ill and everyone would pass that way. You know, like your body would not try and repair itself, would not try and fight off the infection or whatever. It would just yield.
You mean like at the first sign of sickness, like we would just die?
At any stage, it would just, the illness would just, every illness would just overcome us if
Okay.
this was intended to just
I'm
yield.
with you.
Exactly. And so it is with nature. Nature, all the trees and everything, and this is why I love regenerative agroforestry, which it's regenerative. It's regenerating versus sustainable, it versus like something which is unsustainable. It simply takes, but when you're regenerating something, it's healing itself, it's building itself up, you know? And so agroforestry is agricultural forestry. We're using forest-based systems for agriculture. So you see a lot of tree-based agriculture in that. And it's essentially designing an agricultural, that's where you get your food forest from.
Mm-hmm.
That's essentially agroforestry right there, is your food forest. So the regenerative part is recognizing the function of each of the plants and each of the different components, in like the soil, the fungi and the bacteria and everything, and what each plant does within the forest and how to stack all of those functions to heal the soil and grow produce. But in essence, artificially, in a way, you're designing an ecosystem, a self-sustaining, productive ecosystem based on what we see happen in nature itself. And so this becomes regenerative. It self-sustains. So the workload is very little. Maybe initially it's a lot of work, but then eventually it just keeps itself up. So
Mm-hmm.
the reason I love this is because this is the whole greening the desert project and stuff like that. The time in which nature and ecosystems and everything heal can be sped up through this. So people who don't know about this tend to feel very nihilistic about the damage that's being done to the ecosystem. Yes, I mean, I'm an advocate for old growth forests, and the old growth forest network and everything. So there is immense and indescribable amounts of value in old growth forests, like forests which are untouched, unlogged, hundreds or thousands of years old, yada, yada, yada. But we can regenerate the land. We can regenerate dead soil. We can regenerate dead or damaged ecosystems much, much faster than what people generally think
Mm-hmm.
by using regenerative agroforestry. And they're looking now and they're finding that the Western Hemisphere, the forests along the Western Hemisphere, um, pretty much it's a huge food forest before the logging and everything, that came in with the settlers and the colonizers and yada yada. Like, the indigenous people essentially planted these forests that were abundant in food and were sustainable, and they worked with the ecology and everything and provide habitat for animals and all sorts of things. And so that's where regenerative agroforestry really comes from, is it's from not only observing nature but observing indigenous agricultural practices. And so that's where I take the ethnobotany and society and I try and merge them, is because, okay, how can I give you an experience of this? But also, how can I save my little part of the planet?
Yeah.
So that's the practical, the like very hands-on, concrete kind of experience I'm trying to offer people. And then there's my more esoteric, woo-woo, mystical side that not a whole lot of people know about.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's really the heart of it for me. But I have to walk you there.
Yeah.
Um, as I dream of a time where people speak to the animals and the plants and the mushrooms, and
Yeah.
That's the dream. But let's talk food first.
Yeah, I love that. And we've actually never like had this conversation before, I think that we've both kind of like gotten a gist of like what the other person is doing, and we've had like small conversations here and there. And of course, like I've come to your garden before, with which is like now you're totally redoing it.
Yeah.
And so this is like almost a whole new thing. but it's really special and really cool to get to sit down with you and hear in specifics what you're doing. And I think it's, yeah, very, it sounds so you.
Cool.
And it sounds like I was really feeling excited when you were just talking there about, like, we don't have to be so doomsday, nihilistic, pessimistic about the way things are going, because there's solutions and they're not overcomplicated and impossible. And the way is already here.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not a problem to be solved, which I personally think is a bigger philosophical metaphor for so many things. Just asking, like, is this actually a problem?
Yeah.
What if it wasn't a problem?
Yeah.
And it reminds me of a conversation I had with my friend Zan. He was on the podcast. He was the second episode of the season, and he talked about this affirmation that he has that was simply just, and I might mess it up, so sorry if I mess it up, but it was, I allow myself to see value. And that is just like, he goes about his day and he is wearing this lens of everything he sees, everyone he encounters, there's value in that. And maybe it's obvious, or maybe sometimes he has to get a little creative with what the value is. But along that same line, that same thread, I was like, how many less problems in the world would there be if we all just walked around saying, I allow myself to see value?
Yeah.
And that just feels, it literally feels like you can just have a sigh of relief and like, oh, thank God I don't have to, come up with some crazy equation and try to figure out how to be the hero that saves the world. It's like, we can just take a sigh of relief, and that's it. I'm going to take one right now. Yeah. So thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to ask you, I know you shared some practices already, but what is one practice that you would want to share with people? One practice that maybe you use that reminds you that life is sacred, or just one practice that has been important or vital to you?
This is actually going to be the first step in the processes that I've been talking about. The rituals and the ceremonies and everything with the plants and having people connect with them. And I call it the bull process. There's a whole reason behind this, but the actual word that is used is gona or gona. I'm not going to go into that. But ideally of clay, especially if this is your first time doing this. Ideally, you will make a bowl out of natural clay. If you don't have that or can't do that, that's fine. Then a stone bowl would be fine, but clay is ideal, even if it's not natural or even if you didn't make it. But ideally, a clay bowl. In a perfect world, you would extract the clay from the land that you live in or are born from and do that whole thing. There's a whole thing. I'm planning on a whole series on this, or I would like to run events or programs where people go through these processes and everything. But you get a clay bowl and you pick a tree, any tree. Okay. Ideally, it would be a tree where you live, like in your yard or something like that. One that's easy for you to access. Okay. And you just sit with that tree. And over time, as you spend time with that tree, when you witness something happen to it, or something that occurs, like let's say it's an oak tree and a squirrel, you see a squirrel eating that acorn, and then it drops the acorn on the ground. You go pick up that acorn and you put it in the bowl. And ideally, you'll journal what you actually saw. Okay, like squirrel, the date, and squirrel ate the acorn, something like that. And what this will do over time is, with that tree, you'll see how it's a center of life. And I probably shouldn't go into this, but there are other steps after this. But essentially, after you gather a certain amount of items that pertain to the stories you're gathering for that tree in the bowl, and over time, as you jot them down, you will start to develop the capacity to read life like a dream and see the signs in nature. That in this season, this happens, in this season, this happens, and you'll see how that tree responds to each situation it's handled, whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, a rainstorm, a thunderstorm. Maybe it catches some disease, maybe somebody cuts it down or whatever. All these different situations that are thrown at it, because a tree can't go anywhere. It has to stay rooted in the ground. And as you gather these stories, not only are you watching what's happening to it, but gradually you're gathering that tree's solution for every problem. And you are taking in its wisdom. And it's offering you a path for each of those problems in your life and an approach to that. But not only that, it's offering you the wisdom of how to support other people. And yeah, that's pretty much the whole process. Can I just check in and see if there's a different process I'm supposed to share?
Yeah. I mean, I think you shared it well the first time, but yeah, take your time.
Because I feel like there's something different that they want. Okay, that was simple. Yes, this is a much easier process. This one's much simpler.
Okay.
And it's very effective. I actually use this one a lot. Again, you're going to take a bowl. It doesn't have to be any particular kind of bowl, but a metal bowl, ideally copper, would be good. It could be a clay bowl, or even iron would be good. And you want to go somewhere where there aren't chemicals. Chemicals are everywhere now, but you want to go somewhere like, ideally a forest or something where there's no spraying actively happening, other than in Florida where they spray everywhere for mosquitoes. And gather the soil from the base of a tree. The older the tree, the better. Okay? Or if you have a place where there's clay, then you can gather the clay. Now, this bowl, you can keep it in an altar, you can keep it next to your bed, you can keep it wherever. Nobody's going to fuck with it. You are the only person that should touch this bowl or what's inside of it. Okay? If you were lucky enough to get clay, then you may have to grind it up into a powder. Okay? If not, great. But you'll need it to be liquidy. With the soil, what you'll do is you'll get another little dish and you'll mix it with some water, ideally from a spring or a river, not the ocean. It should not be salt water. Tap water if you have to, or rainwater is fantastic. And you'll just mix the soil or the clay with the water until it becomes like a paste or mud or whatever. But you don't want it to just be water. It shouldn't be like a watercolor. It needs to be something that'll stick when you put it on.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the sole of your foot, you'll mark that. If you're like me, you'll cover your whole foot in it. Okay? But at least the very sole of your foot, like that really sweet spot when you press it, it's like, that's nice. That's where you want it to be. And if you're okay with dirty sheets, you don't have to. If you don't want dirty sheets, then put socks on and you sleep like this throughout the night. Okay? If you're like me, then you'll do this all day long. I don't really wear shoes or socks most of the time, so I would just track mud everywhere, so I can't really do it as much as I'd like. But what this will do, especially for very airy people, and I can be a little more airy or etheric, it will be very grounding to them. For people with weak physical constitutions, it will help to stabilize the body. With people who have allergies, it will help to alleviate the allergies. Now you have to do this consistently for you to, and obviously the more, like, ideally, just dig a hole and take a mud bath. Like that's really the ideal. But this is our societal Band-Aid, and that's really, really my trick. But like I said, the kind of soil where you get it is really the most important thing. And there are ways to kind of up the ante on this practice, but for right now, we'll leave it at that. That, in my experience, sharing that with people has been very supportive for a lot of people.
Yeah, that sounds like a beautiful grounding practice that is simple, but seems like it could be very profound. And I like that it's like somatic in nature, and it gets you, it's like the texture of the soil, and you are lovingly like rubbing it into your feet. And yeah, that's beautiful. I'm excited to try it. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, is there anything else you want to say before we wrap up? Is there anything else bubbling up inside of you?
Honestly, go hug a tree. Go hug a tree.
Yeah.
And talk to that same tree. Go hug a tree every day. The same tree every day if you can, and tell it about your day. You don't even have to ask it anything, or just sit there in silence and just experience what its life is like just sitting there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Love that. All right. Well, can you share with us where people can, if people want to reach out and connect with you, where they can follow you on social media and just connect with you in your work?
Yeah. So I'm starting a YouTube channel. It's very, very, very small. I have like 2 videos on there. Well, they're 2 shorts. So, but it's at the Ancestor's Hand. That's the same for my Instagram tag, at the Ancestor's Hand, and my Facebook page is the Ancestor's Hand. So I tried to make it real simple, straight across the board. There is an old profile that's just Ancestor's Hand. I didn't really understand how the whole thing worked, so it got locked. So it's out there. I can't delete it. So it's the Ancestor's Hand. That's the only thing.
Okay, the Ancestor's Hand, and we'll link that all in the show notes below. Wherever you're listening or watching to this, all of his information will be in the show notes, where you can connect and reach out and talk about plants and whatever you want to talk about. You can definitely get into some interesting conversations with Steven. So
cool.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. And thank you to everyone who has been listening. We appreciate you, and we would love to hear any feedback you have. If you want to comment, if you try the practice, either of the practices that Stephen just offered, if you have any thoughts and you want to join in on the conversation, please leave a comment, like, subscribe, follow, do all those things at Sacred Reclamation and at The Ancestor's Hand. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you so much.